Welcome. This is the first of its kind partnership between the Denver Business Journal and the Latino Leadership Institute. We are in the midst of a dramatic demographic evolution here in Colorado, and I'm excited by the potential of the Latino marketplace kind of coming into full bloom here in Colorado. It's going to mean really big things for our local companies and our workforce in general. We're going to hear a lot of wonderful information, but I'm excited to make sure that the mainline business community here in Denver really begins to understand all the opportunity that's wrapped up in that shift.
At the Latino Leadership Institute, we realized to have real and meaningful change that we have to convene stakeholders. We have to be the conduit of really important data and research about this ever-growing, rapidly growing, and very diverse community. And now I'm excited to announce that we have taken parts of our curriculum and are now offering that to organizations, large, small, public, and private, because what we've learned through the Latino Leadership Institute is a benefit for other organizations to learn from. And from the very beginning, we had individuals that believed in our mission and brought their expertise to us and to our fellows. And it is an honor to be able to introduce to you today someone who has been with the LLI truly since the beginning. Please join me in welcoming today's keynote speaker, Dr. David Hayes Bautista.
If you're an investor and you want to go anywhere around the world and invest your hard-earned money, usually the first thing you want to know is, what's the GDP in this region? What's its size and how is it growing? If it's tiny and the growth rate is negative, forget it. If it's tiny and the growth rate is 0, forget it. If it's tiny and the growth rate is anemic, forget it. What we want as investors is a good, sizable GDP with a nice, good, positive growth rate. So with that, let's take a look at the Latino GDP, and we'll just consider it, how does it function compared to the rest of the US GDP. So to begin with, the Latino GDP for 2015 was $2.13 trillion. How big is that? What's $2.13 trillion? So let's put it in a global context. If we compare the Latino GDP to all the other countries in the world, the Latino GDP is the world's 7th largest economy. That's how big it is. Bigger than Italy, bigger than India, bigger than Brazil. Baby boomers are retiring. About 10,000 baby boomers leave the labor force every day. And in fact, if nothing else were happening, if there weren't Latinos in the United States, basically the labor force would be shrinking. Just then, as all those baby boomers say, oh, by the way, my Social Security, my Medicare, I want to sell my property and make a profit so I can live on it. I want the stock market to produce so I can live on my pension. Just at that point, the labor force would be shrinking. That would be a recipe almost for disaster. But here is the number of Latinos that have been added to the labor force just in the 5 years between 2010 and 2015. 2.5 million Latinos into the labor force. In fact, most of the Latinos that are entering are young Latinos. They were born here. About 1 million Latinos were born in the year 2002. This year, they turn 16 and can enter the labor force, 1 million. They are US citizens, by the way. They were born here. This is not immigration. It has nothing to do with any walls or anything. They were born here. At the total number of businesses that were here between 2010 and 2015, again, the hard part of the recession, overall in the country, the number of businesses grew by 2%, but this was largely thanks to Latinos. Latino-owned businesses in that 5 years grew by 47%, almost half again as many, during the hardest economic times I think most of us have experienced in our lifetimes, while the non-Latino number of businesses actually shrank by 2%. That's more what we read about in the headlines. As a percent of the GDP, we project that by 2020, Latinos will be producing close to 13%. However, as we look at the change, the growth component of the overall GDP, actually Latinos, because it's growing, will be contributing by 2020 nearly 25% of the growth in the GDP. That's coming from these very vigorous businesses. So as investors, and let's think of ourselves here in Denver, we're going to invest in the future of the Colorado economy. Where would we want to invest our money? Here is the world's 7th largest GDP, highly educated, getting more highly educated every day, very productive, looking forward, has electricity available in its infrastructure 24/7. There's water. Well, if you travel in third world, you can't always rely on electricity and water, much less Wi-Fi, okay? Good roads, rule of law, you can put your money in, you can take your money out. It's the world's 7th largest GDP, 3rd fastest world growth rate, 70% faster than the US GDP. I mean, what part of GDP growth do we not understand? This is where we want to invest. It's not cost, it is investment for this country's future. Thank you very much.
I'm going to share a little bit about Colorado's data for all of us in the room today. In 2000, Latinos represented about 17% of this state's population. Fast forward to 2020, where it's projected that we're going to be just shy of 1/4 of this state's population. And by 2040, we're looking at being 1/3 of the state's population. 2050 is a big year for Latinos in Colorado because it's there that we will be just shy of 40% of Colorado's total population. Latinos under the age of 18. That is the largest subset of Latinos in Colorado today. 35% of all Latinos are under the age of 18. So a majority of our Latinos have yet to enter Colorado's workforce. This is critically important as we begin to think about how Latinos are going to impact Colorado's economy and Colorado's workforce now and into the future. When we look at projections, which mirrors almost our demographic projection, you'll see here that by 2050, Latinos are going to represent over 1/3, almost 40% of Colorado's total workforce. Since 1990, the Latino purchasing power has increased by 450%, and we have yet to even see our true demographic growth in Colorado. That doesn't start taking place until about 2025. So the opportunity for businesses and organizations to begin to engage the Latino marketplace today in preparation for that huge demographic shift has boundless opportunities. So I leave and close with this, is that we have a saying at the LLI that, demography does not determine destiny. Just because the Latino population is going to have an impact on every facet of life in Colorado, destiny is not a matter of chance, it's a matter of choice. And our panelists have all chosen to take an active, proactive approach in solving some of these problems, taking the opportunities that the burgeoning Latino population presents, and also, I think in some cases, taking risks and being real, true leaders in their industry and space.
I have the privilege of heading the Office of Latin Affairs, which is the only department in corporate America that is dedicated to this segment. Independent, reports directly to the president. And I think that is part of our key to being successful in really understanding the uniqueness of the Hispanic community throughout the country. One of the things that helps us is we have established a Hispanic Advisory Council. Dr. Batista used to serve on our council, where we bring in stakeholders to help guide us, advise us, coach us, serve as a sounding board on issues on how we can better engage a Hispanic consumer. I think as a company, it's not enough that we just want to tap the consumer of this segment. We have to understand the issues that are impacting this segment.
This is a work in progress for us, so I can certainly share some of our different successes and learnings, but at the same time want to emphasize that our work is not done. So don't think we have it figured out here. Yes, we have been very fortunate to be recognized by the NFL, and that is really a tribute to work with great partners on a variety of different initiatives. Let me share with you a little bit of what we've done on our end. I'll start with what I'll call kind of our Fanatico series of different fan and partner initiatives. Over a series of years, really dating back to 2005, when we first hosted Broncos in Espanol, we've continued to evolve and add to that. It's of note that as we went back and actually a presentation for the Hispanic Advisory Council at Coke that Peter mentioned, we kind of charted some different milestones, and of 15 we cited, 13 of those have been achieved within the last 7 years.
The companies that ultimately have to succeed are those that are going to be doing their investments in the workforce and making sure that they make up a program that comes up to Joelle's very startling slide as to what happens to particularly Latinos post-high school education, that they invest in them for education, for skill set, for skill increases, that they create partnerships with universities or with community college systems to make sure that those employees stay there. Because I think employees, it's pretty easy to get a job in Colorado right now, so I think what they're looking for is more than just a job and a paycheck. They're looking for a commitment to make sure that they can chart a path forward.
We are in a very strong growth mode. Just to give you context, over the last 18 months and looking forward 18 months, we're going to be hiring approximately 1,200 people here in the state of Colorado alone. So the question is, where are you going to be finding those people? And obviously, when you see the demographics that were just talked about, that is the business case in and of itself. Now, one of the things that we've been doing when we've been putting our shoulder to in a very major way is to create an inclusive environment where actually people, to your point, people feel like they want to be there. They're emotionally connected with what you're trying to do, and that's what we call inclusion, because if you don't have inclusion and have an environment where people want to be there, you're not going to get diversity. And so we've been spending a lot of time on that. We've established over the last 4 years a number of what we call Ball Resource Group, they're affinity groups, one of which is the Hispanic, of which Chris Chavez here, and he's actually on the Latino Leadership Institute board of directors as well. My point in saying all this is we, as private enterprise, have an obligation to look at what the demographics are happening and actually help support that.
First way I think we can partner together is to try to design our academic programs and our career services, our career attainment programs to meet the workforce needs of the future and the input of Latino students coming in. We want to achieve this attainment gap. It's going to be about reaching out, bringing students, about supporting them financially, both public and private, but also designing curriculums and cohort groups to move them through the 4 years.
Let me put a challenge out to every single person in this room. If you don't have a mentor right now, get one. That's how you start. You know, I do think it's all about engagement. Rebecca very eloquently talked about the different needs of different people and how they process and how they learn. You know, just to give you an example at Ball, we have a summer internship program. 5 years ago, it was probably about 30 students each summer. Now it's well over 100. Over the last 2 years, we've implemented a formal mentoring system at Ball. In fact, my mentor is the head of our Hispanic BRG group. And the reason for that is she's a female, she's a STEM student, she's in a middle management, and she needs to have the courage to be able to stand up. We each, as individuals, have the responsibility. You know, the power truly is in the herd, and if you can get the herd moving step by step, it goes from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8, etc. Because we can no longer rely on our public institutions to mentor, train, and develop the next generation of leaders. We have to do it. We have to take the responsibility.
In addition to voter registration, one thing that we all need to pay attention to, it's very important, is the upcoming census. If we don't capture the information on the census, it's going to have an impact on all of us, from schools to businesses to Colorado and every other part of this country. So I would put the census on top of a priority list for all of us, not just Latinos.
The people on this panel eloquently describe to us their intentions and their action from those intentions. You have to be intentional in developing the practices and policies and implementing those practices and policies to be inclusive and diverse. And you've seen here tremendous panel who have been intentional in their corporations, in their businesses, and in their practices and policies in making sure that Latinos are part of their new leadership. And they see it as not only a social and political imperative, but certainly an economic imperative.